Hey, welcome to Square Body Stuff. I'm Chad. This is Squeaky. And if you like seeing some redneck play around with his junky old rusted out square bodies, this is the channel for you. Quick recap, if you're not familiar with this channel, not familiar with this truck, this is Squeaky. He's my 78 C10, step side, worn out 305, big cam, headers, intake, 250 shot of nitrous, SM 465 4-speed, 342 gears with a mini spool in the rear. Yeah, he's just my play toy. I have nothing to lose with it. So I've been playing around with it with the nitrous. My next step is, in this video, we're going to be setting up the line lock for the front end. This kit is actually a Summit brand. Went with a little cheaper one. It's Summit, part number 760000. Pretty decent looking little unit. The reviews on it was kind of back and forth, so you know, I take a lot of the negative reviews of maybe they didn't install it correctly, which I've done stuff like that before, and thought, well, this thing's a piece of junk. Well, then I realized I installed it wrong. So what we're gonna do is, I've kind of already started scoping stuff out, so that's why the package is already open. I didn't go with the whole opening the box and moving off. Because I've already got the switch. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the switch. It came with this switch here. Just kind of, if I get the camera around here, it just had like a little rubber sleeve around it. So I took my knob off, stretched that sleeve out to where it goes over the shifter. It's nice and solid. It won't flop around. It's out of my way when I'm shifting. I mean, I guess if I had a technique, I'd call it open palm technique, because I don't actually grab a hold of the shifter, but it's right here, easy to get a hold of. The wiring on these things is really simple. It will have a fuse in there. Well, actually, I think I've got an open spot on my fuse block that's already fused, so I can just run 12 volts to from my fuse block to the switch, and then from the switch out to the solenoid, and the solenoid's got a hot side and a ground. Wiring's pretty simple. Now, hooking up the brake lines is not really that hard to do. It's got to be after the proportioning valve, so I've got that figured out. Actually, I've already got the line. One of the lines broke loose, and I'm going to replace, because you have to take one side off of the proportioning valve and block it off, and then the other line, which is the line that goes to the right side, is one I chose. Is I'm going to split that line in two, and the side coming from the proportioning valve will go to the inlet of the solenoid, and then I'll have the out going to the right side, and then another new line going to the left side. So that's kind of a brief explanation of how it works. I'll show some video or pictures or something of how it's all set up once I get it done. I need to get a brake line out, and I got to go run to the parts store to get a longer brake line and some fittings. I decided to kind of looked it over. Doesn't really look like it's going to be that hard of a deal as long as I can get that brake line broke loose. Got the fittings broke loose on the truck, so everything else should be fairly gravy. It'll be kind of hard because I'll be standing on my head almost to work on the proportioning valve, because it's, if you're not familiar, if you are familiar, you know where they're at, but on all the square bodies, the proportioning valve is down here on the front cross member. Not completely impossible to get to, but not the easiest either. I'll be able to get down in here without my inner fenders and get a little closer. But I've already got my brake line broke loose going to this side. That's enough jibber jabber. I'm going to go get some parts and start tearing into this thing. Heading to the parts store to get some parts. Bing! Brake adapter. Let's see what they got. What else do we need? Do you have any like strip club air fresheners that has a stripper glitter and smells of smoke and cheap perfume?
Yes, we can get it for you.
Okay, so that way, you know, if you ever find yourself in one of them establishments, you can just blame it on your air freshener when you get home. Finally made it back from the parts store after 2 trips, 2 different O'Reillys, and a hardware store to get what I wanted. Local O'Reillys only had 2 of these, and I needed 3. They are the pipe thread, 1/8" pipe thread to the inverted flare. Then I needed an elbow. The kit came with the plugs. I already had plug. I needed an elbow. I'm gonna get this thing mounted up. I'm gonna get all these fittings sealed up with just some thread sealer, just Permatex thread sealer. Pretty good stuff. It's a liquid. I don't really like using thread tape on stuff like this. But put thread sealer on these, get these tightened up, get them where I want them, and then I'll mount the solenoid on the cross member, on the front cross member, and start plumbing my lines. In order to get my holes drilled and get them somewhat right, they may be a little off. They'll probably end up crooked, but oh well. I had to make a little template out of a piece of cardboard and transfer it to the bottom side of that cross member, drill it from up underneath. So hopefully that'll work. I'll get this thing mounted and then we'll start running some lines. I got the hard one done because I had to flare it while it was down the truck and kind of messed up on the first go round, but I got it the second time. I'm going to show you guys how I do a double flare. I mean, I guess you could just put it on there, use this, flare it out, but a double flare is actually you're rolling it in and it's a double wall of your flare. So I'll show you how I do it, and this is just a run-of-the-mill tool I got from O'Reilly's. This is the cheap one, it's not the nice fancy one. And I set it with the tube sticking out. Of course, it's in the proper hole on your jig. And this little guy here, that's how deep you want to set it. And you tighten up your nuts. You want to get them good and tight because you don't want that tube to slip inside the jig. Alright, then you take this guy, it's got that in there, and it's, if you can see, I don't know if you can see with the camera or not, but it's kind of tapered, and it kind of sets your flare, the first part of it. Put it on there, put your screw daddy thing on there. And wrench it down. It's a lot easier if you have this clamped in a vise or something like that. But you just keep tightening it down until that little anvil, or whatever you want to call it, is seated, and it should be tight. And you loosen it up. And sometimes it gets stuck in there. Be very careful if you're going to pry it out with a screwdriver, because you pry too hard, you're going to break that pin off your, let's call it an anvil. Just kind of wiggle it back and forth. If I would have cleaned my inside of my tube out a little bit before I done this, it probably would have not stuck as bad, but I'm lazy. And I'm showing you this not because this is the only way. This is the way I do it. It may be right, may be wrong. This is the way I've always done it. Always had good luck. I was self-taught on this. Just read the instructions out of the box and went with it. Then you put, well, let me show you. We're going to get a close-up of what the flare looks like. So he just kind of mushrooms it out and sets it, and then you'll take this daily, whatever you want to call it, and finish setting your flare. Nothing really much to it, just could be a pain in the butt. I usually do this in my vise, but I got a bunch of junk on that workbench and didn't feel like cleaning it off, so I could set the camera up and make it all nice and neat, so I'm just going to struggle a little bit. And I don't crank that flare down as tight as I can, because whenever you install it and tighten it up, it will, if you leave a little bit of space and not all the way smashed, then it'll seat itself. It'll seat each other on your other part. So, because if you squish it too hard, I've done that before until I realized I was just going too hard on this. It just wouldn't seal because it was smashed too hard with this tool, and it didn't have enough give whenever I went to seat it up. If that makes any sense. It makes sense to me. Pull it out. As long as you didn't forget to put your nut on there, you're ready to thread it in and have you a brake line. Not much to it. I guess I ought to make just an actual how-to video on how to flare tubing, or at least how I do it. And also this copper, or this nut, don't use copper tubing. This is not copper tubing. This is that black oxide, I think is what they call it. It's a super malleable tubing. It's really easy to bend. I still try to use a tubing bender or something like that so I don't kink it, but it forms really easy. It's got a lot of give to it. It's a lot easier than stainless or steel lines. So this one's ready to go in. I think I'm gonna stick it in there, and a lot of times I usually put on the threads, try not to get it down in there, but on the threads themselves, put a little anti-seize on there, and you'll thank yourself later when you go to pull it back apart. I got all the lines hooked up now, and I pushed on the brake. It's actually pretty firm. Still got a little bit of air in it. I don't see any leaks. So right now I'm just going to try to let it gravity bleed. And by gravity bleed, I mean I break one bleeder screw loose on, I do it one side at a time. I don't want it to maybe possibly draw from one side to the other, draw air in. So I just break one bleeder screw loose at a time, and actually thread it out quite a bit, let it flow, just let it flow on the ground. I got some floor dry underneath there to catch it, and it'll just gravity flow, and actually right now I can see little air bubbles coming out of it. Now the bleeder screw, let me see if I can get a flashlight on there. You guys can see that. It's flowing out. Of course that may have been the last air bubble, but it's flowing out pretty good. I've got my reservoir full, and you have to have your cap off of your reservoir. There is another air bubble. If it flows like that, you can pretty much bleed your brakes pretty easily without even pumping them. More air coming out. Now it doesn't always work, but sometimes I get lucky, especially the way this pedal was, like I said, was already pretty pretty firm, so there wasn't a lot of air in the system. So I think I'll be able to get away with just gravity bleed them and go on from there. So while that's bleeding out, I'm going to run some wires. All I got to do is run one wire up to the solenoid and then run a wire from my switch to my fuse block. Got it all finished up, and I haven't actually tested it out. I've hit the button, I can hear the solenoid clicking, so it seems to be working. My brakes are bled out. I'm ready to try it out. I'm going to set the camera up, and of course you have to forgive the background noise right now because it started raining, and on this tin roof it gets kind of noisy. But it's going to get really loud here in a minute, because I'm going to fire this thing up inside the shop and test out this this line lock, see how it works. I'll show you how it turned out. Not too bad. It's not SEMA quality or nothing, but I think as long as it works, it'll work. I'll show you the button. It's not too bad. It's right there handy. It works! Almost got it in my workbench. That's alright. Well, it works. I was going to try to do like just smoke the whole shop up for you guys, but he's wanting to walk sideways and tear the shop up, so I better not do that. Hope you guys got something out of this. Maybe educational, maybe entertaining, maybe neither one. I don't know. I just want to show you guys what I've been doing with this truck, and hopefully, of course it's raining right now, but this is Friday. Sunday we are planning, if the weather permits, going to the track and seeing what all my improvements are going to do with this truck, because actually I've done quite a bit in the last couple weeks on him since the last time we had him at the track. So I'm excited to try it all out. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to cut it off here. Till next time, y'all keep your square bodies rolling. We'll catch you later. Power!